Okay, hello, welcome to IoT and JavaScript. This is a basic introduction to IoT. Now, this is a super fast version of the talk. I'm just going to jump right into it. Great, my name's Joe. I work for a little company called MongoDB. I'm a developer advocate and a software engineer. I mostly work with JavaScript and Node. If you want to follow any of the links I'm going to be talking about, or the code, or video, or slides, or whatever, there's a bit.ly link in the upper right-hand corner of the slides. Also, bit.ly link down there at the bottom. If you want to follow me, that's my socials, whatever. And if I say anything controversial, that's not me. It's not my employer. Please don't get me fired. All right, thank you. What are we going to talk about today? Well, I first want to introduce just IoT in general, and then I want to talk about JavaScript and IoT, and then I want to show you my awesome new project, IoT Kitty Litter Box. So what the heck is IoT? IoT is anything that you put a chip in it. Anything that you can connect to the internet, or as a toaster, or a dishwasher, or whatever. The internet with a bunch of stuff on it, right? But my favorite part about IoT isn't like more the practical side. I like kind of the stupid shit side of it, right? I like kind of like the weird art projects and the weird dumb stuff that comes about from IoT. That's fascinating. It's the Wild West days right now of IoT, and we're putting chips in everything. Some of it's cool, some of it sucks. I think it's all fascinating. Particularly using art. Like us as developers, we're uniquely positioned to be able to explore this new media. Internet connected, like hardware based, right? I think that that's fascinating. You know, like artists aren't capable of doing the work that we do. Right? It's a whole new frontier. So, okay, IoT, it's super cool. I love it. I love the weird art part about it. Hope you do too. Okay, so why should you be picking Node and JavaScript for your next IoT project? Kind of weird, right? Because we don't typically think of Node and JavaScript when we think about IoT projects. Hardware has not been the realm of internet languages, particularly JavaScript before. But why would you consider Node? Well, did you know that actually 58% of IoT developers self-identify as Node developers, IoT developers? Did I say that right? 58% of IoT developers self-identify as Node developers. I think that's a quorum. That's a lot of developers are already self-identifying as Node and IoT developers. That's a huge community. Also, personal opinion time here. Please don't flame me. JavaScript's a wonderful choice for new developers jumping in, particularly if you've been using JavaScript like in your day job or at a boot camp or you've been teaching. Why make your life harder? You know what I mean? Like, C and C++ have traditionally been used because they are much lighter weight and you have to deal with all the memory management. JavaScript has this thing called a garbage collector. It makes it a little bit beefier to use on the system on chips. But chips are getting so much cheaper and bigger and easier to use, and using JavaScript on it, it can make sense, right? But especially if you're learning something, you're going to be learning a lot of new things, particularly with the hardware. Why make your life harder? Use the software you are comfortable with. Take it one step at a time. JavaScript and Node is super easy to update over a network. So traditionally with IoT projects, how you've had to update those is you have to actually take that chip in, plug it in, and reflash that firmware on it. With IoT projects built with Node and JavaScript, super easy. You just do a git pull and an npm install, and boom, right? You're updated. That's super easy to do remotely. Internet already speaks JavaScript. Whatever. It's like expanding out to so many things. Like, why stop there? Like, let's continue the language of the web, continue to make it JavaScript. And you may not know this, but there's a ton of existing libraries and tools and APIs out there for JavaScript developers trying to make IoT projects. The two big ones today are Node.js and Johnny 5. I'm actually going to show you Johnny 5 in particular for my IoT Kitty Litter Box. And lastly, I just want to talk about too how the architecture of JavaScript and Node particularly fits IoT projects. Why is that? Well, think about how you develop an IoT project. It's event-driven. For example, like let's say you have a moisture sensor in your litter box to determine if it's dirty or not, right? You're waiting for some sort of moisture event to be triggered by your sensor, and then you want to have some sort of function or callback function that runs asynchronously. That is the foundation of how Node and JavaScript is built. It's all built on callback functions and waiting for these events to happen asynchronously. And the structure of JavaScript and the structure of real-life event handling actually marries together supremely well. Okay, great. So Node and JavaScript. Let's get to my favorite bit. my IoT Kitty Litter Box. So, I like jumping into something practical. We're not going to be able to have time here today to go into every nuts and bolts of it, but I do want to show you some of the most interesting parts of it, and I want to walk you through how I started to build this project to finishing it. So here's the actual finalized box. It's a little fancy. I got a little mid-century fancy box. You don't have to get one of these. You can get like a $20 plastic reusable or like box on Amazon. You don't have to get this fancy, but I love mine, right? I think they're super fun. And how does this thing actually work, right? Well, so I have my box and I have a lid on it, right? That like sliding door, and it's got a little sensor on it. And when that door opens, that means the box is now in maintenance mode. When it's in maintenance mode, that means I'm either cleaning out litter or adding new litter to it. But the point is that base weight of that box is going to change. So when I close that box, it reinitializes a new base weight for the box, and then it waits. It waits for that event to happen. And the event for us is having a cat-sized object enter the box. Could be a raccoon, could be a possum, but I'm just waiting for an object that's approximately the size of a cat to enter that box. And I detect that being using they're load cells. They're basically an internet connected bathroom scale I put underneath of the box. Waits for a weight to be added to that box. Okay, so we have a cat in the box. I wait a little bit for the cat to do its business, and then I take a passive measurement of my cat's weight, and I send that off to the cloud, MongoDB database in the cloud, right? So I can save that for later. And also take a timestamp of when that event happened. When the bathroom event happened. I wait for the cat to leave. Once that weight leaves, I wait a little bit for everything to settle down again, like it's a minute, and then I reinitialize a new base weight of the box, and then I wait again for another cat-sized object in that box. Either wait for a cat to enter the box, or I wait for a new maintenance event to start the process all over again. Okay, so it's pretty simple actually, right? That's pretty simple. Let's jump into some code. So, first step of any project. This is the most intimidating, I think, especially if you're a brand new IoT developer, but that's just getting your first thing to work. And with IoT projects, hello world of IoT projects is making an LED blink. Actually, this is my real project. You can see my load cells scattered around, and you can see my Raspberry Pi 3B Plus up there. Not anything too fancy, but it worked for me, right? And you can see my little LED on the breakout board. Getting an LED blink, just make sure that you have all of your wires, your chips initialized, and I have Node and Johnny 5 all initialized correctly on my Raspberry Pi. It's like just a basic kind of checkup. It's the first thing you could do to like just check in the basic setup. So what does that actually look like? Well, glad you asked. So Johnny 5 is a NPM library, and Johnny 5 works with a ton of different chips. I happen to be using Raspberry Pis. It's something I'm most comfortable with, and it's like a lightweight Unix-based system on there. So when I mess things up, I could go into the chip or the board and kind of like reconfigure stuff. It was a comfortable environment, right? I didn't have to learn everything brand new with IoT project. So I'm basically telling Johnny 5, like, hey, Johnny 5, I'm working with a Raspberry Pi board here today. Cool, just so you know. So when I initialize Johnny 5, I just say, brand new Raspberry Pi board, here we go. There's a callback function, right? We're waiting for that board to be ready, initialize, and then once that board is starting to listen to events, I initialize a brand new LED on P113. Now I have to look this up every time. That's on the GPIO, that's on the Raspberry Pi. There's these little pins that allow you to interact with inputs and outputs of data coming in out of your Pi. And I had to look up which one was the 13th. I don't know. But I'm saying on this GPIO pin, the 13th pin, I have an LED connected out here. And Johnny 5 is a built-in function that just says blink. That's it. That's it. That's the hello world, right? On the 13th pin, I have an LED, and I want it to blink. That's it. Super easy. I think it's even easy for human beings to read this, which I think is so cool. Okay, so that's the hello world. Let's start making a toilet. So the first thing I want to do is build out the sensor to tell when I'm in maintenance mode. So I have a little magnetic switch that tells when the door is open or not. I'm initializing the board just like we did before. The only difference is instead of initializing a LED, I have a switch on the 13th or on the 16th GPIO pin. So I'm just saying on this one, there's a switch, and then there's two callback functions on either it's open or closed state. When it's opened up, do this thing. If it's closed, do this thing. And we can see that actually in working here. So when I open up the box, you can see that little white thing screwed to the side. And I have my laptop hooked up. And you'll be able to see as I'm opening and closing that door, you can see that being registered on my laptop in real time. Cool. So pretty simple. It looks pretty similar to our hello world. And I can change states of the maintenance mode based on whether that door is open or closed. Okay, here's the fun fancy part. The load cells. Okay, so I use the spawn child process, which allows us to spin up a separate thread using Node. I've never used it before. It's super cool. But the thing is, I had to use it because I couldn't actually find a Johnny 5 library that could work with the load cells I purchased. So I did find one in Python, and I used the spawn child process to actually spawn a Python process that actually goes and gets the weights, and I can send it back up to my parent thread in Node. Super cool. I love this. This is the most elegant solution I could come up with, minus me actually just making the little load cells work from scratch, but I didn't know how to do that. Right? I'm still new at this. That's okay. And great. Okay. That was the most complicated part. I want to show how that works. So, I love showing how this thing works. So you can see the actual load cells are underneath of that piece of plywood in the box. And it's kind of hard to tell from this video, but I'm going to be applying pressure to that piece of plywood, and you'll be able to see on the terminal the weights being registered in real time. Every 1/10 of a second, I'm reading from that Python script running and getting the weight on those load cells. That's it. Okay, I work for MongoDB, so I have to talk about this IoT time series data. So I designed my time series data to be readable in the form of a dashboard, right? So I wanted to be displaying all the data, which is super common for IoT use case, and it works really, really well for a document-based schema. I just want to show really fast what it looks like. I have some metadata about my box. Cool. The other thing then, I have an array of event data. So I'm just, every day I create a brand new document in my MongoDB database. And then every single day, every single time I push a event to that event array for that current day's data, right? So over time, I just have these events, and I can start doing amazing data analysis and data visualizations based on this. And it's super easy, super scalable, and it's based on the way I'm designing it. I know document-based schema designs can be really complicated, but this is such an elegant solution, I think, and I love it. It's super great use case for MongoDB. So next IoT project, you need to save some data, you should think MongoDB. All right, end of plug. This is the whole box assembly being put together. You can see my little Raspberry Pi there. I screwed it to the inside of the box, assembled it all up. I'm gonna plug it in right here. Boom, eyes on, and that's it. All hidden, looks great, works awesome. Use it every day. And there's my dumb cat sitting on top of the box. Okay, so if I've inspired you all to be a JavaScript IoT master, or just IoT master in general, how do you do that? I say just do it. Get out there, make a stupid project, make an LED turn it on and off. That's it, right? Just start simple, start small, but make something. I think I want to be pushing all of us to be making more projects just for us. I think oftentimes we're pressured to make side projects that are monetizable, but just do something, right? Especially if you're learning it, do what you can. Don't have to go too big. Do what you can and try to make something cool just for you. You know what I mean? You should make something amazing. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I had so much fun. I hope I inspired you today to make something cool and amazing just for yourself. All the resources can be found at that bit.ly link. Here's some additional stuff you can find about IoT and JavaScript and MongoDB. And if you want to follow me, this is where you can do that. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. I love you so much. Goodbye.